Well, hello there, young people. Hope you're all doing well. Here's what we're going to do today. We're going to discuss how you can solve a quadratic equation using the square root method. This basically just uses inverse operations in a way you're probably familiar with, but it also can involve some complex numbers and imaginary solutions. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to learn how, why, and when to solve a quadratic equation using the square root property. And yeah, it's going to be awesome. Now, in order to do this, you're going to have to be familiar with inverse operations, how to simplify square roots, how to use a calculator well, and of course, how to have a good time doing it. All right, let's get to it, shall we? So first of all, when should you use this method? Of course, if the instructions say to, then you do. But otherwise, if there is not an x term, so like if the coefficient b is 0, you can use this. So if you only have an x squared or parentheses x plus or minus some number squared, then you can use this, and it is super easy. It's easier than factoring, easier than the quadratic formula. The problem is it doesn't always work. You have to have a situation where the coefficient of x is 0. So you don't see an x term, you just see an x squared. Or if you do see an x, it's in parentheses and being squared. Okay? Now, the reason why is, as I just mentioned, super easy. It's just inverse operations. Man, KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid, right? That's the only way I get through life. All right, so let's see an example of how, right? Okay, so this equation right here, 3 times the quantity x minus 4 squared equals 81. We're going to solve that using the square root method. Now, using the square root method is using inverse operations. So the acronym I use for the order of operations is PEMDAS. You know, anything in a group goes first, and then exponents, then multiplication and division, whichever comes first, left to right, and then add and subtract. So if you're simplifying something, that's what you use. But if you're solving, you do it backwards. So you first add or subtract, you do the opposite, then you multiply or divide, you do the opposite, and then you do the opposite of whatever exponent you see, and then you do anything in a group last. So it's exactly that way for all of these problems. This right here is your steps, SADMEP, right? So you're going to do inverse operations every single time. It's exactly the same. The numbers might look different. They may be arranged differently, but this is what you're using. You should maybe get a tattoo of this because it's super important. All right, let's go through this, shall we? Check this out. The first thing we're going to do is, well, can't actually subtract the 4, can we? Because it's in the group. So there's nothing being added, subtracted. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the multiplication. So we have a times 3 right here. So we do the inverse. We divide both sides by 3. You get 27. Now we have an exponent of 2. The opposite of exponent of 2 is, of course, square root. So you take the square root of both sides, and now you can add 4 to both sides. Now you have 2 answers here. You have 4 plus the square root of 27, 4 minus the square root of 27. So you're going to use your calculator to plug those numbers in. Boom, done, no problema. So I know we did that example rather quickly just for an overview. Let's look at another example more carefully now, shall we? So let's say we're going to solve this one. 7x squared minus 4 is 24. Yeah, let's do it, shall we? So on this one, your very first step is you're going to be adding 4 to both sides because it's not inside parentheses like it was in the last one, right? And you get 7x squared equals 28. So that's your very first step right there. Boom, done. Now your next step is you're going to divide both sides by 7. Boom, done. And then you're going to take the square root of both sides. So you get 2 and negative 2. No problema. See what I mean? It doesn't matter how the equation looks. If you have an x squared term and not an x term, you can just use SADMEP and get x by itself. Pretty simple. Now, your turn. And yeah, don't be like those dogs. Anyway, here you go. I would like you to try this one right here. So if you're watching this video, just go ahead and pause it. Give it a shot. Now, oh boy, that looks scary, right? How many of you guys got 8 and negative 8? So you just add 9 to both sides, you get 64. Take the square root of 64, you get 8 and negative 8. Boom, done. You don't even need a calculator for that one, right? Okay, now, there are basically 2 variations you're going to see where you can use the square root formula or square root method. One is where you have an x squared, and one is where you have the x in a set of parentheses with another number being added or subtracted from it. You can even have a number inside that's multiplying by it. And that whole group is squared. Do you see? And so you're just going to use, inverse operations. So these two right here, why don't you go ahead and try these, see how you do. Go ahead and pause the video, and then when you're done, I'll go ahead and work through this one, right? So first one, boom, 9 over 2 and negative 9 over 2. If you use a calculator, you get 4.5 and negative 4.5. For the next one, you're going to add 1 first, then you're going to divide by 9, take the square root. Square root of 1 is 1 and negative 1. So you have 4, negative 4, and negative 6. Hope you guys got those right. Man. Okay, let's see our last situation that's going to arise. Sometimes you end up with imaginary answers. So this one right here is going to be such a thing. Let's go ahead and try this right here. So look, you see we're going to have to subtract 33 first, and then we're going to have to divide both sides by 7. Then we're going to take the square root, and then we're going to add that 6. We're going to have two equations to do that to. But let's go ahead and knock it out, right? So we subtract 33 from both sides, right? 5 minus 33 is 28. Then we're going to go ahead and divide both sides by 7, right? Now we take the square root of both sides. And so the square root of x minus 6 squared is just x minus 6. The square root of negative 4 is 2i and negative 2i. That's why we have two solutions right here. We have two answers for this number right here, plus 2i and minus 2i. You don't really need to write the plus right there, but I did just in case. And now what we have to do is we have to solve each of these equations. So we're going to add 6 to both sides. And for this equation, we're going to add 6 to both sides. So we're going to add 6 all over the place, right? And we get x equals 6 plus 2i and 6 minus 2i. Now be careful. Be sure that you write this number in the correct form. You have the real part first, the imaginary part second. Boom, we're done. So how did we do? Do you understand how, why, and when to solve a quadratic equation by using the square root property? I hope so. Leave me a comment down below if you do. If you're having questions, leave me a comment below. If you want one to try just on your way out, I'll put one more up here. And otherwise, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.